You know that feeling when you find an old pair of wired headphones? Right, like shoved in the back of some junk drawer.
Oh, absolutely. The ones you haven't used in years.
Yeah, exactly. And you pull them out, and instead of a nice straight cord, you are holding this impossible, just tightly wound ball of knots.
It is such a universal frustration. You pull on one end thinking you are making linear progress.
Right, you think you found the straight line,
Yeah.
but then you realize it just loops right back into the exact same knot you started with.
Yeah, you were just staring at the same tangle.
Well, when we talk about family trees, we don't usually think of headphone wires. I mean, we expect a sprawling oak tree, right?
Right, you start at the trunk, and the branches are supposed to just keep splitting, reaching out wider and wider.
Exactly.
Hmm.
But today, for this deep dive, we are looking at a set of genealogical records from colonial Puerto Rico that proves family trees aren't always majestic oaks.
No, sometimes they are quite literally the headphone wire from hell.
They really are. So welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is to untangle an absolute mess of a family chart. We are exploring what happens when the natural geography of an island meets a stubborn, sheer refusal to marry outside of your own social circle.
Yeah, what we are unpacking today is honestly a masterclass in extreme genealogical convergence.
It really is. We are looking at two incredibly powerful families in the town of San German, Puerto Rico during the colonial era.
And, the reality of how they structured their families, it plays out less like a dry historical text and way more like a high-stakes telenovela.
Oh, totally. We are talking corsets, political corruption, and a staggering amount of cousin marrying.
That truly staggering amount. It is a fascinating study in endogamy.
Right, and for anyone listening who might not use that word every day, endogamy is basically the practice of marrying strictly within a specific social group, right?
Exactly. Within a caste, or in this specific case, a very tightly knit extended family.
But to really grasp how bizarre this gets and how these two distinct families eventually collide, we have to examine the primary knot in the wire first.
We do. We have to start with the Estrada family. They clearly had a massive lock on their side of the island.
They really did. So let's trace this lineage back to a figure named Governor Alonso de Estrada. In the historical records, he is referred to as the grandfather of the 16th degree.
Which just sounds incredibly regal, doesn't it?
It sounds like a title you have to bow to when he walks into a room.
It carries this immense historical gravity. But mathematically speaking, a 16th degree ancestor is a biological paradox.
Wait, really? How so?
Well, if you look at how the specific family operated, the math just doesn't work. If we break down the basic math of human reproduction, going back 16 generations means you should theoretically have tens of thousands of individual ancestors.
Oh, right, because it multiplies. Let's map that out for a second. You have 2 parents, 4 grandparents.
8 great-grandparents, 16 great-great-grandparents.
Right, and it just multiplies outward exponentially with every single generation you go back.
Yeah.
So by the 16th generation, you should have a small city's worth of ancestors contributing to your genetic.
Precisely. The tree is supposed to fan out infinitely. But when you follow the Estrada line as it progresses down through the generations, that math just completely falls apart.
Because they aren't fanning out?
No, they are collapsing in on themselves. The sheer rampant endogamy means the exact same people are occupying multiple slots on that mathematical tree.
I mean, I get wanting to keep wealth in the family,
Mm-hmm.
but doesn't this entirely backfire politically at some point?
What do you mean?
Well, if you only marry your cousins, how do you forge alliances with other powerful towns or, mainland Spain? Aren't you just isolating yourself entirely?
I mean, that is a highly logical, modern perspective, but you really have to put yourself in the shoes of a 16th century colonial landowner here.
Okay, paint that picture for me.
Power on an island like Puerto Rico at that time was intensely local. The Spanish crown awarded these massive land grants called encomiendas to early influential families.
Right, so land is everything.
Exactly. Land is power. If you marry an outsider, even a very influential one from mainland Spain, you are essentially splitting your local wealth.
Oh, I see. You are introducing new political allegiances that might actually favor the crown over your own local island interests.
Precisely. By marrying your cousin, the land stays entirely in the family. The titles stay in the family. The power remains this unbroken monopoly.
The sources actually mention a fear of catching outsider germs, which sounds hilarious now, but it is really just a fear of diluting their monopoly.
Yeah, it was a very real, tangible fear of losing control over their domain. And the historical record shows just how far they took this.
Give me an example. How far are we talking?
Well, as we move down the Estrada line, we encounter a woman named Juana Vélez Borrero y de Ortega. She marries a man named Teniente Juan Francisco Martínez de Matos.
Okay, it sounds like a normal, fairly regal Spanish marriage.
Right, but the genealogical catch here is that Teniente Juan Francisco is actually already a Martínez de Matos himself.
Wow, which means they are sharing incredibly close family ties before they even step up to the altar.
They are essentially combining two halves of the exact same estate back together, and this creates a compounding effect over the generations.
It just snowballs.
It really does. A few branches down, we see the birth of a woman named Catalina Sarchez. Because of all this intermarrying, Catalina's lineage is entirely tangled from birth.
Tangled how?
Well, she is a colon, but she is also a Martínez de Matos simultaneously.
Oh my gosh. It is a genealogical bugo sale. Buy one ancestor, get one free.
That is exactly what it is.
You look at her chart, and she is carrying the lineage of two major branches of the family at the exact same time.
She is the living embodiment of that closed loop. And then it gets better. Catalina marries Captain Juan Rivera Falcon.
So we are just stacking these already intertwined lineages on top of each other now. At what point does this stop being a strategic power move and start becoming just an absolute logistical nightmare?
It is definitely a nightmare for modern historians.
I mean, just trying to map this out on a piece of paper would require a fourth dimension. How do they even keep track of who owned what?
Well, for future genealogists, yes, it's a headache. But for the people living in that era, it was a highly efficient, if entirely insular way to run a society.
I guess if everyone's in on it, the paperwork stays in the same house.
Exactly. These family charts weren't just records of who loved whom. They were legal documents. They were literal deeds to land.
Which brings us to the next generation, where we start to see how these tight family bonds bleed directly into local politics, right?
Oh, absolutely, because Catalina and Juan have a daughter, Gisabel Rivera, and Isabel's marriage is where this stops being just a quirky family tree and starts looking somewhat like a cartel.
Yeah, Isabel marries a man whose name serves as a literal map of this endogamy. His name is Juan Francisco Martínez de Matos y Vélez de Borrero y Ortiz Francisco.
It really is a map.
I challenge anyone listening to say that 3 times fast. That is not a name. That is a CVS receipt of genetics.
It is incredibly long, but every single surname in that string is a historical marker of wealth and influence in the region.
So they are just hoarding names.
Pretty much. Every time they married a cousin, they just tacked another powerful family name onto the end to legally stake their claim to that specific branch's assets.
That is wild. And it's his mother's side of the family that brings in a fascinating political connection, isn't it?
It is. His mother's side connects directly to a man named Rodrigo Ruiz Ortiz Vélez.
And Rodrigo isn't just a wealthy landowner. He's the very first mayor of San German, Puerto Rico.
A true pioneer in local governance.
A pioneer in governance, and apparently a pioneer in political corruption as well.
Oh, very much so.
Because the sources detailed this incredible historical scandal involving him. This pioneering mayor was actually acquitted in a massive contraband sting alongside another local figure named Juan Rodriguez de Olivencia.
Right, and this forces us to look at the nature of justice and economics in a colonial environment.
Set the scene for us. Why were they smuggling in the first place?
During this era, the Spanish crown operated under a strict mercantilist system. They held a total, absolute monopoly on trade.
So the colonists couldn't just buy from anyone.
No, ships from Spain would typically only dock in the main port of San Juan. But San German, being on the other side of the island, was often completely starved for basic goods and resources.
They were just left high and dry, so what do?
They engage in illegal contraband trade. They start trading under the table with the Dutch, the English, and the French.
I mean, they had to survive, so they started smuggling. But if the crown catches you, that is a massive, massive crime.
A massive crime that requires a highly coordinated cover-up. And think about what we've just discussed regarding their family tree.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Right. When you live in a town where the mayor, the law enforcement, the landowners, the merchants, and the judges are all quite literally your cousins, the legal system operates very differently.
It's the 16th century equivalent of the "we were just holding it for a friend" defense. And it works perfectly because the guy banging the gavel is probably your uncle.
The consolidation of familial ties is simultaneously a consolidation of political immunity.
So nobody is going to rat anyone out.
Never. When everyone is family, the code of silence isn't just about protecting a corrupt colleague. It's about protecting your own bloodline, your own inherited wealth, and honestly, your own dinner table.
Because if the mayor goes down for smuggling, the entire family's assets could be seized by the crown.
Precisely. They all go down together.
So it makes me wonder, does this kind of genealogical looping make a town run more smoothly because everyone has the exact same goals, or does it just make it infinitely easier to operate a shadow economy?
Honestly, it creates a perfectly insulated shadow economy. While a highly unified ruling class can enforce order efficiently, it does so entirely for its own benefit.
Right, so the smooth running of the town is really just the smooth running of the family's business interests.
Exactly. Accountability to any outside authority essentially just vanishes.
It's unbelievable. Okay, so we've got the Estrada line locking down their side of the island. We have the incredibly long CVS receipt names, the BOGO ancestors, and a mayor running a family-sanctioned smuggling ring.
It is a lot to take in.
That alone is a wild story. But this is where we hit the absolute craziest part of the research.
Because as insulated as the Estrada web was, they weren't the only power players on the board.
Right. What happens when this isolated bubble runs into another equally powerful, equally tangled family?
This is where the geometry of the family tree completely breaks down. We have to shift our focus to an entirely different lineage that was developing parallel to the Estradas.
Who are we looking at now?
We are looking at the descendants of conquistador Marcos Alonso Garza y de Alarcón.
Another regal, very distant patriarch.
Yes. And just like the Estrada tree, as we follow the Garza lineage down through the generations, we see the exact same cultural priorities.
So they're doing the exact same thing.
We see the same patterns of endogamy to protect their land grants. We trace this line down to Capitan Blas de la Garza Falcón.
They're just shuffling the same 5 names in a hat and handing them out at birth to keep the power structure intact.
It really looks that way. And they are developing over generations, supposedly completely distinct from the Estradas.
But because they exist in the same geographical and social confines of San German, they don't just brush past each other.
No, they collide.
And the collision is the twist that honestly made my jaw drop when I was reading this.
It is quite the reveal.
We are tracing down this completely separate Garza chart, looking at all these new historical figures, and suddenly, who appears?
Tell them.
Captain Juan Rivera Falcon, the exact same man who married the Bugo saleswoman, Catalina Sanchez, from the first chart.
Captain Juan Rivera Falcon acts as the linchpin. He is the knot that ties the two massive tangled webs together.
It is a genealogical Groundhog Day. You turn a corner thinking you are exploring a completely new branch of the family, and boom, you run into the exact same ancestors you just left.
It is inescapable.
Imagine taking one of those modern DNA ancestry tests today, right? You spit in the tube, you open the app on your phone, and you find out your family tree is shaped like a pretzel. You just keep driving in a circle.
It completely defies our modern understanding of how genetics are supposed to flow.
Scientifically speaking, what does this actually do?
Well, scientifically speaking, when these two massive endogamous webs fuse together like this, it creates a profound genetic bottleneck.
Walk me through the actual biology of that. What does a genetic bottleneck physically mean for the people born into this loop?
Let's look at Isabel's son, Joseph Martinez de Matos y de Rivera.
Okay, let's use Joseph as the example.
Joseph is the perfect case study. In a normal, expansive family tree, every new marriage introduces a fresh set of genetic material.
Right, you get new traits.
It introduces new immune defenses, new physical traits, and broadens the overall genetic diversity of the offspring. It is sort of like constantly adding new cards to a deck before you shuffle it.
But in Joseph's case, nobody is adding any new cards.
Exactly. They are playing with a rapidly shrinking deck.
Wow.
When you analyze Joseph's place in this chart, he represents what geneticists would consider a total dead end for new genes.
Because his branches don't diverge outward at all.
No, they cross back over each other so many times that he is inheriting the exact same genetic material from multiple different pathways.
So if a specific trait like, say, a vulnerability to a certain disease exists in that deck of cards, there's no new genetic material coming in to override it.
Exactly. The frequency of specific alleles or gene variants becomes incredibly concentrated.
So bad traits can just get amplified.
Yes, recessive traits that might normally be completely masked by a dominant gene from an outside parent suddenly have a much higher chance of expressing themselves.
Because both parents are carrying the exact same recessive gene.
Inherited from the exact same shared ancestor, yes, there is essentially zero infusion of genetic diversity.
It's staggering to think about. We joke about the super long names and the telenovela drama of it all, but when you zoom out and look at the biological reality, It is incredibly intense.
It really is. They were essentially running a multi-generational science experiment without even realizing it.
They weren't thinking about allele frequencies or recessive traits at all, were they?
Not at all. They were thinking purely about encomiendas, political immunity, and their social status.
But it illustrates how profoundly human geography and social structures dictate biology.
It really does. The biological legacy they left behind is a permanent physical record of their political choices.
They built a fortress to keep their wealth in, and they accidentally locked their own DNA inside with it.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it, actually. The desire to maintain control in a colonial setting completely overrode the natural expansion of a human population.
They created a society that was essentially an echo chamber of its own elite families.
Both politically and genetically, yes.
So, just synthesizing all of this chaos for you, the listener, we have traced the incredibly looping, tangled lines of the Estrada and Garza families in colonial Puerto Rico.
And what a tangled web it is.
Truly. And the major takeaway here is that history is rarely made up of neat, diverging parallel lines.
Human geography, the intense consolidation of political power, and the sheer isolation of island living, they create literal kinship webs.
It's not a tree. It is a tightly woven net.
It forces us to reconsider how we view historical records, you know? They aren't just lists of names.
Right, they are diagrams of power and survival. Which leads to my only piece of practical advice for this entire deep dive.
Oh, let's hear it.
If you are ever visiting San German, Puerto Rico, and you decide to go out to a bar, please be very, very careful who you flirt with.
A solid rule of thumb.
Because statistically speaking, based on these historical charts, they might just be your second cousin twice removed.
A very fair warning derived from rigorous historical data.
But it does leave me with a final, lingering thought to mull over. We look back at the 16th century, right? At this physically isolated island, and we laugh at the sheer absurdity of this much genealogical overlap.
It is easy to view it as just a relic of the past.
Exactly. We think of it as ancient history. But it makes me wonder about the structures we are building today.
How so?
Well, think about our modern socioeconomic bubbles. Think about the hyper-curated digital communities we build online.
Well, that's interesting, where we only interact with people who share our exact views.
Right. Our exact political views, our exact income brackets, our exact lifestyles. We may not be restricted by the physical geography of an ocean anymore, but we are incredibly adept at constructing our own invisible boundaries.
We really are. We filter out the outsiders just as aggressively as the Stratas did, just in different digital ways.
So, what might the closed circles of our modern-day bubbles look like to sociologists or geneticists a few hundred years from now?
That is a fascinating question.
Are we building our own modern-day Groundhog Day family trees? Our own tangled headphone wires? Without even realizing it? Just something to think about the next time you look around and realize you are entirely surrounded by people who are exactly like you.